This is the Sony Xperia Z5, and this is Flagships of the past. So this was a flagship from back in 2015. This phone very easily keeps up with the flagships from back then, the Galaxy series, the S6, and the Galaxy Note 5, the LG G4 that came out about then. This phone's aesthetics, if you get away from the big bezels, which actually I think adds to the whole aesthetic feeling that Sony was going for here. The aesthetics are great. The sound that comes out of the phone is really good. The display is great. The battery life is okay, but this really is a good phone. The camera, we'll talk about in detail later, because the camera is actually something that's kind of interesting to me. It's a mixed bag, if you will. But we're going to go into more detail about this flagship of the past. This is the Sony Xperia Z5, and this is Keep It Simple Phone Tech. Let's go back to the aesthetics on this phone. Again, it's got those large bezels, especially on the top and bottom, but those bezels, they do house front-facing speakers, which sound really good. It's got a nice, rich, full sound. Some of the better front-facing speakers you're going to hear on any phone. On the back side, it's nice and clean. It's just a premium look. You see Xperia on the bottom. You see it's got that single 23 megapixel camera that we're going to talk about later on. But just a good, clean look overall. Now, with that, it is slippery, so you're going to see me slide in a case. You'll want a case, you'll want a skin, you'll want something to give it grip, because this phone already slipped right through my hand one time as I'm holding it. Maybe I wasn't being so careful, but it's a testament to how slippery this phone is. It's got a 5.2-inch screen. It's LCD. Again, it's one of the better displays that you're going to find on any phone. Even today, Sony, I had no idea, but they do a fantastic job with their LCDs. Really good. And you see image enhancement here for this subheading within settings. So you can saturate the screen a little bit. You can neutralize the screen, if you will, make it more neutral, natural colors. Also, you can adjust the white balance. You can tweak this to however you want to make your eyes really, get used to the screen, feel comfortable with this screen here. Nice to have those additional settings. I don't remember other flagships of that time having those additional settings. So it's just really good to be able to see that. Also, you've got double tap to wake. So I don't know, maybe a lot of phones have that today now. I don't know, but at least that's a very handy feature to have. On the left side of the phone, you've got Xperia etched in, very classy look. You've got the SIM card / SD card tray. And you've got this door that's kind of funky anyhow to work with. You have to be really careful with it because it's easily to break off. But that door does allow this phone, or helps this phone, to be IP68 water and dust resistant. On the top, you've got a headphone jack. Wired headphones, it sounds terrific. Just so I'm going to put it out there right now. On the bottom, you've got a micro USB port, so USB-C didn't come out until 2016. On the left side, you've got the volume rocker that's down kind of low. You've got a button dedicated for the camera. That's awesome. It's a two-stage deal. And when you press down just a little bit, you go into focus. You press down all the way, you get your picture. There's a SIM card tray. Again, in addition to this door being kind of finicky, the SIM card tray is also a trick to get used to getting out and putting back into place. So just something to keep in mind. Again, we're looking at the back of the phone. Just very classy look. I just love the look of this phone. Now, I've never really messed with Sony before, so this is my first real experience with an Xperia product. And as you can tell, I'm pretty impressed with the Sony Xperia experience. The fingerprint sensor. Now, if you're in the USA, for some reason, the USA models, I don't know why, they didn't have a fingerprint sensor. So apparently I picked up an unlocked model that was non-USA. Fingerprint sensor works pretty good. It's almost two-stage also. You have to first wake up the phone, and then the fingerprint sensor will read and it'll open up. I mean, it works pretty well anyhow. Here's another look at the LCD. Again, 1080p. It's over 400 pixels per inch, something like that. Just a beautiful display for LCD. Who needs 1440p? Who needs the AMOLED? Yes, Samsung, I mean, they're masters at that sort of thing. But this screen can hold its own. It's just a really good display. You're not going to be in any way disappointed with this display at all. Again, it can rival the displays of today, I believe. Taking a look at the performance, you've got the Snapdragon Qualcomm Snapdragon 810 processor. You've got 3 gigabytes of RAM, 32 gigabytes of onboard storage. You can extend that with the SD card, of course. I don't remember what the number was, maybe 200 gigabytes, somewhere around there. Take a look at the specs. I'll leave a link from one of the reviews back then that'll give you an idea of what that storage capacity is for the SD card if you want to know that. Brightness handles well in the sunlight. You see it gets pretty dim also, so it'll be good for low light conditions. Again, Sony put a lot of, you can tell that a lot of craftsmanship, a lot of quality, they put a lot of good time into the development of this phone. And it's a shame that they don't sell more today, that they don't run with Samsung and LG, because I bet you if more people knew about just the quality of these phones through advertisement, then Sony would be right there with Samsung. But I guess that's another story. Performance is really good on this phone. So that's kind of what I was illustrating there. It'll easily keep up with the mid-range phones here of today and maybe even exceed them just a little bit. One thing to note with the battery, it gets a little warm on top, the first third of the phone, but it's nothing alarming, it's nothing overwhelming. It just gets a little warm from time to time under heavy loads. Now you're going to see me shake the phone because with the front-facing speakers, now I said the sound is good, like really good, some of the best front-facing speakers. The sound doesn't necessarily get particularly loud, but it is a little bit fuller than what you would hear normally off of a phone speakers. But the phone really shakes, so it becomes a really dramatic experience because when you jack up the sound, jack up the volume I should say, the sound will really shake. And again, you heard me talk about the wired headphones. It sounds great. It sounds really good. Now, let me go on to the camera. I'm kind of falling behind here, but the camera, and this is one thing I'm going to spend quite a bit of time on the rear-facing camera. I'm not going to talk about the front-facing camera. Sorry about that. But again, a link in the description. You can read more about front-facing camera if you're interested in that. So 23 megapixel camera. It actually starts by default when you first use this phone at 8 megapixels. I don't know why, but it does. And you're seeing an example of shots from this 23 megapixel camera once you get it set to 23 megapixel. There's actually a couple of different options. But if you take a look at the pictures, in good lighting conditions and even low lighting conditions with the flash, the pictures come out really great. Now, I said it's a mixed bag towards the beginning of this, so you're about to find out why I think it's a mixed bag and why you might have heard some of the reviewers complain about this camera. And it's definitely not the audio that comes from the videos that you take. It's the digital zoom. Now, this is my particular complaint about this phone. The digital zoom, as you can see, just creates a lot of noise. Doesn't work well at all. You zoom in, that's what you get. Now, if you don't zoom in, then you get a really quality experience when it comes to either video or taking your photos. As you can see here, I didn't mess with the digital zoom and it looks great. So granted, you would need a bigger screen to really get a better idea of the video that I was trying to capture. But that's what happens when the digital zoom doesn't work as well as you would expect. So I think that is the sort of downfall of this phone if the camera is something that you were expecting out of this flagship, because you need to zoom in sometimes, at least I think anyhow. You want to be able to capture subjects and get a little closer look, but if you're running into all of that grain in the process of doing so, then yeah, it kind of ruins the experience, and now you have to go through and adjust and modify so you can get pictures that maybe you have to get really close to the subject in order to be able to make up for the fact that you can't zoom in on it. Anyhow, I don't want to harp on that too much, but that's just one thing that I noticed was a disappointment with this particular phone and this particular camera. This is a refurbished phone that I received, or at least I'm presuming that it is, so maybe that's the problem. Maybe that's why the digital zoom is not good. But I'm not going to talk too much about the digital zoom anymore. We'll focus on the positives. You do have a manual mode. That manual mode has a variety of options. The superior audio mode you saw has a variety of options. You have different resolutions to choose from. You've got a whole assortment of options when it comes to video editing. So there's a lot of great qualities to this camera. Sony, I mean, again, they do a really good job as far as that's concerned. Much more so than what I remember Samsung having at that time, and even more so than what LG had back at that time. So let me go ahead and wrap this video up. It's a little bit longer than what I've been doing on these reviews here lately. Two things I didn't mention earlier in the video that are noteworthy. One, Android 7.1, that's as high as it's going to go. Two, with this 2900 milliamp hour battery, you won't be able to go a full day if you're a heavy user on a charge because it drains pretty quickly. So keep that in mind. If you're a moderate user, you probably make it through the day just fine. It does have a quick charge though to make up for it. I got this phone for about 80 bucks or maybe even less than that. So I'll leave it to you to decide whether or not this phone is worth it here in 2019. Thanks for watching.